Welcome back, FusionAuth fans. Today we have Mark with us. Another Mark. This is the month of Marks. I almost forgot. How's it going, Mark?
Good. Good afternoon.
I startled him. He was off doing engineering things. So this week we don't have a lot of news, but the news that we have, I think, is pretty cool. So we have a new drop that came out, a new blog post that came out this week. Actually, last week. I'm already skipping it. So this is about all of our SDKs for the JavaScript world. So JavaScript SDKs that you can put and use towards FusionAuth for all of the different calls and things like that, making it a little more simple. This breaks down kind of what SDKs are, client libraries are, just kind of the contrast between those two things, because we often get like questions, what's the difference on these? And the client libraries, just as a reminder, are a wrapper over our APIs, whereas an SDK is built for that specific collection or for that specific framework itself. So definitely a good read. Has a lot of good pointers back to our docs, which is cool. I think I touched on this last week, but we rewrote all of our docs so that they are in Astro now. And these examples pull directly from our repos, which is awesome, because then you can go straight from this blog post and this code and dive directly into it. And so if you ever see a bug, feel free to PR that repo directly. So you've got Angular, React, Vue sitting in here, so it's pretty sweet. Great post by Dan. Dan, he's our man. I don't know. We got any fun terms for Dan, Mark? You've known him a lot longer than I have.
Not that much longer. No.
Okay, fair
He's
enough.
the Dan.
He's the Dan. There's Dan and Daniel, right?
That's right.
Okay, it's fair. This I talked about last week, but I'm still pretty stoked about it. The more I talk with the fly.io folks, I think we can actually add on to this a little further for some better examples, kind of containerizing a Postgres cluster on their side that will get stood up so that they have or like manage, and then FusionAuth you can deploy out to it. So we walk through both those steps in this guide. The third piece that they actually offered up, and I thought was a pretty cool idea, is to run either Bun or a Next.js application right beside it and kind of continue through this thought process. I think there's some questions in here once you get FusionAuth up for what you would want to do with it. So if you've seen this, if you are looking to deploy to fly.io, reach out to me directly on Twitter or in our Slack group. I'd be happy to tell you or show you exactly how this works. It's pretty fun to go through. And then finally, this blog post, it's been on my mind for a while, so I had to kind of write it out and get it out there. I just want authentication to work. And what I mean by that, and the reason that I'm so excited about FusionAuth is just the start, right? Like that gets you into our application. The rest of it is kind of my concern. So like leave authentication to FusionAuth. We got you. Worry about the rest of your application and your business logic. So I throw out some fun puns in here. It reminded me back of my Napster days and things like that. So this is kind of the key. You can't leak passwords if you don't store them. So as an application developer, let FusionAuth deal with that. We'll handle it. We got it. So that's what this blog post is all about. Also calls out some of the other backend as a service components you might use with FusionAuth to kind of continue building out that app. Super fun post. Mark actually reminded me as we're kind of going live, is it docs releases, release notes? This is what I'm looking for. Just another reminder, I think we called this out in the past, but if you didn't upgrade when 1.48 first came out, 1.48.1 is released fully, and that does fix some bugs that are sitting in there. So one of the biggest ones is this, which, yes, we are serving over 1 million users on instances of FusionAuth. So definitely pay attention to that in your upgrades. Now, I will join back to our wonderful guest. Mark, how's it going, man?
Good. Thanks, Alex.
Can you break down a little bit just about yourself and your journey to start at FusionAuth?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Manus. I'm a software engineer here at FusionAuth. I'm coming up close to 1 year here, just a few weeks shy. Thank you. I've worked on various aspects of the product, implemented a few features. Lately, though, I've been working mostly on our FusionAuth Cloud offering. So adding some modernization to that, um, speeding up deployments, um, adding unlimited domains, which is why we're here, which is one of the features that I led earlier this year, as well as just a lot of other enhancements. So as I mentioned before, speeding up deployments on our roadmap is also auto scaling of clusters to meet demand, things that our customers are really coming to expect from a modern cloud offering.
Can you kind of break that down a little bit when we talk about auto scaling? So, I'm a silly DevRel person. I don't really get down into the nitty gritty. When we talk about auto scaling like that, is that like a Kubernetes setup that you have, or is that like Docker Swarm? What does that look like to scale?
Yeah, so just a little backstory. Our current offering is very similar to how one might deploy a non-containerized FusionAuth instance in their own on-prem deployment. You pick the size of the EC2. We kind of abstract that a bit, so we have medium large, extra large. But then if you need more horsepower, you basically have to go into your cloud offering and increase that manually. So we are in the process of migrating to a Kubernetes-based cloud, where we can actually dynamically scale your cloud instances as demand increases.
Is that a hot take? Did people know that until you just dropped it?
Probably not.
Hot takes. I love hot takes on the show. Perfect.
Yep.
That's
so,
exciting.
Yep, we're looking. We don't have a GA release, but we are looking to have production deployments released by the end of the year.
Cool. That's really neat. So does that mean I think we support it now? This is just kind of how FusionAuth is managing it on our end for our hosting purposes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. That's really exciting. I love it. So you kind of talked about like how you came onto FusionAuth, a little bit of what you were working on, but the two main key points. I see two blogs. One has a marketing name on it, so I'm a little surprised. So I'll bring that one up. So this has a marketing person. I don't know if it's directly connected to our other post, which I believe you wrote, correct?
That's correct.
So tell me more about unlimited custom domains. Or like, first of all, can you break down in FusionAuth why you would need a custom domain to start with?
Absolutely. So when you create a FusionAuth cloud deployment, we give you a name of your choosing, but it's suffixed with the FusionAuth.io domain. So you might say this is Acme Corp login .fusionauth.io. That's not really good for customers' branding. So customers want to be able to use their own domain for that. So say they have acmecorp.com and they want it to be login.acmecorp.com. So we've supported that for a long time through various methods. But due to some limitations in the AWS infrastructure that we're using, we've only been able to support up to 4 custom domains for a given deployment. These are related to some quotas that we ran into with load balancers and just certificates that we have to issue for each one of these custom domains. So that was a limitation for a lot of our customers. We have some which have thousands of custom domains.
And the reason for that is, are they like a SaaS provider? So they're like adding more and more to like the service they're actually providing so they can give a login?
Yeah, so there are some business models like franchises where they may have one single deployment, but they have many companies that all want to have their own, or all need to have their own domain name for this one deployment. There's also managed service providers which are providing authentication services using our product that also they may have thousands of customers of their own. So each one of those host names will still point to the same deployment, just under a different domain name.
That totally makes sense. When would someone start to realize, outside of a SaaS situation, like if you have a mobile app and 2 web apps, are you going to need more than one domain in that scenario? Or is that typically like, no, we'll be at auth.acmecorp.com for all of that stuff? It's only when they go to that like multi-tenant kind of side of that that they start to need this?
Yeah, it depends on their brand requirements. If it's for a single acmecorp.com product, one domain is probably fine across mobile and web. But if they wanted to segment out different brands below that, that's when they would need more custom domains.
I know we have like NDAs and things like that, but do you have a customer that you can talk about that they've done this with?
I don't think I can mention any specific customers.
Okay. So let's
just 'cause I
say
don't know the NDA
maybe
status.
there's like a gaming company, a large gaming company, and they have sub brands under that. Are those examples where they truly want the kind of that brand and that domain to stay locked in on that?
Absolutely. So a gaming company may actually have many studios that have different brand names below them. Each one of them, they want to keep that user on their same domain. They want to make sure that they're seeing that same name throughout the entire login process. They don't want to jump to the parent company. Or maybe if you were, not that Microsoft is one of our customers, but if you're Microsoft, you may have a live.com subdomain or an Azure domain that you kind of want that login flow to stay within that domain, and instead of bouncing back up to the top level Microsoft.com.
And how does that differentiate us, FusionAuth, from like Auth0 and how they manage things? From what I've seen a lot of, it's typically you're hitting Auth0's domain most of the time, until you start to like get into these enterprise scenarios where they might release some of that stuff. Is ours just out of the box, you're getting that all the time, or what is that, an enterprise feature? What's that look like on FusionAuth?
There are tiers. So when you get into the production level, highly available deployments, that's when we can enable unlimited domains, because there is a cost for that on our side. It's always been possible using some kind of third party like Cloudflare. You can always throw that in front of your deployments, but that also has a pretty steep cost.
Okay.
And the same could be true with Auth0. Usually you can use a third party to perform the domain management in front of an existing deployment, again, with a cost. I don't know exactly what Auth0's pricing model looks like for having many domains at a single IDP.
I can almost guarantee you it's a lot more than ours.
Yep. I would put money on that.
Based on their pricing for a single one, not in the like mom and pop shops and the just getting started range. I think Auth0 does a great job with those, but the larger cases gets super expensive. So, so you talk about in your posts a little bit, and this is where you're gonna lose me. So use Alex dumbed down words here. There's things like application load balancer and like WAFs and stuff like that. Can you talk about what that is and how we kind of switched away from that and into our new way of kind of handling it?
Yeah. So the blog post kind of describes the process we went through of actually building out our unlimited domains infrastructure. And it outlines at the start the quotas and the limitations that Amazon or AWS imposed on us around how many domains that we can support. So fundamentally, when you connect up to a given name, say login.acmecorp.com, there needs to be an SSL certificate on the other side to ensure that your traffic is encrypted and secure. So that's where all of these limitations come in. There's a limited number of certificates that you can add to a load balancer. and there's a limit of the number of names you can have in a single certificate.
Okay.
So previously, in order to deploy a custom domain name, it required some DNS changes on the customer side so they could point their acmecorp.com over to our services, as well as this fairly complex provisioning process for the certificate itself. So we wanted to fix at least what we could as part of our unlimited domains offering, and remove all of the restrictions that Amazon was imposing for us. So that required us to not use Amazon's load balancers, which are these web servers that accept traffic, web requests, and then forward them to the correct backend.
Okay.
We basically had to implement that ourselves using an open source software called Caddy. And Caddy handles all of the heavy lifting around certificate generation. It integrates with Let's Encrypt, so we can dynamically provision SSL certificates very quickly with just a single DNS change on the customer side.
Nice. Well, Let's Encrypt is kind of an open source type of tool, right?
Let's Encrypt is a service which has very wide corporate backing from Microsoft, Facebook, Red Hat, I believe. It's kind of the standard for encrypting everything, right? The group wants all web traffic to be over HTTPS and SSL, so they just made it very easy to securely create a certificate.
Yeah, I'm like looking at their sponsors. We've got Akamai, Fastly, I mean, GitHub, you can go down the list. Holy smokes. So a lot of people are relying on this. That's amazing. So if someone, we did a lot of work for someone to come into FusionAuth and we'll host for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I always like to talk about kind of the path forward, right? So if you take a FusionAuth instance, you're running it on Docker, you're trying it out, you've got it hooked up to your app. It's like, okay, we're ready to move this along. And you start to take that to the next level and you want to move it up to a hosting provider. That's not us. How painful would it be to go down this road for someone else?
Well, if they only need a single or a couple of domain names, it's usually not that bad.
Okay.
The pain comes in when you need many thousands of potential domains. Customers are going to run into the same limitations that we did as soon as they move it into a cloud provider. And they all have similar restrictions, whether you're on GCP or Azure or AWS.
Sure, that makes sense. Cool.
And Cloudflare is an option that some of our customers use. When you want something like this, you hit the call for pricing page. So I can't comment on how much it costs to use that, but that's usually a red flag.
Yeah, and typically, like maybe not typically, but a lot of the Cloudflare piece is to like get into or out of China, right? Like there's a lot of restrictions that come along with traffic in and out of that side of the world, and Cloudflare does a lot of that handling. Do you see a lot of people using that for that reason, or is there more benefit going down that side?
I'm not aware of people using it for that particular scenario.
Okay.
Cloudflare has a great product. They do DDoS prevention, and they're a security company fundamentally. So they are sort of your firewall in front of your authentication service. So yeah, they have a great product. You can put it in front of really any of your websites or FusionAuth.
Yeah, cool. That makes sense. I think we've kind of talked through the scenario a lot, and I'm kind of one of those people that I need to see something. So I'm going to put this up. This is your diagram. Can you just walk me through kind of like the left to right of this? I know you already described all the parts and pieces, but just how all of the traffic moves and how we handle it.
Absolutely. So one thing that Amazon provides is this component called Global Accelerator. We utilize that to reduce latency around the world for our customers' deployments. So effectively what Global Accelerator does is if you have a FusionAuth deployment in, say, North Virginia, but you have someone trying to access it from Singapore. Global Accelerator allows that traffic to enter Amazon's network in Singapore and get routed directly across the world through their network into Northern Virginia without having to go through many ISP hops along the way. So that's a value add that we just automatically give all of our customers. And when the traffic,
again, to dumb it down, that's essentially going under the wire in the ocean, popping up. You don't have to jump anywhere else. Like it's almost direct.
It's almost direct. It eliminates a number of hops, and we've measured 40% decreases in latency.
Oh my gosh!
Just by using Global Accelerator, depending on the region that you're coming from.
That's amazing. Okay.
So when it hits the Global Accelerator in Northern Virginia, that traffic needs to start getting routed to that customer's particular deployment. So previously, before we had unlimited domains, that would go to a single ALB, application load balancer, which would perform the SSL termination. And that's where all of the host names and domain names that our customers are using get terminated. So auth.acmecorp.com is going to get terminated SSL there and re-encrypted and sent to that customer specific deployment. But since there are limitations in ALB, we had to replace that layer with our. So Caddy has been deployed inside of ECS. So it's a containerized deployment infrastructure, sort of halfway between Docker and Kubernetes. And it handles auto scaling and all the routing and everything that we need for that for those Caddy instances to operate. And then those end up performing the duty of re-encrypting traffic and sending it to the specific deployment that the traffic is routed towards.
So this is ECS, not EKS. And,
right, ECS is Elastic Container Service, not Kubernetes service.
And the hot take might be that we're switching something over to EKS, maybe not that portion, but to the right of it.
To the right of it, in the future, is all going to be EKS.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So yeah, keep walking me down the path a little further.
Yeah, so another value add that we provide our customers is the Web Application Firewall, or WAF. This does similar function to what Cloudflare would do, where we can prevent DDoS attacks, SIM floods, sort of these massive attacks that are happening all the time against various websites around the world, and often against our customers' deployments. So WAF, due to a limitation in AWS, requires the traffic to go through another ALB. So we actually have Caddy send the traffic back through a application load balancer, so we can provide that WAF protection before that malicious traffic actually hits the customer deployment.
Gotcha. So is there any reason there isn't anything in front of Caddy prior to that, or that's because it has to do all of the kind of IP reassignment inside, and that's why we have to hit it later on?
It has to do with the SSL termination. So up to Caddy, everything is encrypted. So WAF can't inspect traffic.
Doesn't understand it. Got it.
It's encrypted. So that's why we had to add in a second hop here.
Okay. And so a typical deployment and tenant is always one of these hard terms with FusionAuth, right? So if you're in an auth 0 or I probably shouldn't say our competitor all the time, but we all know they're the big elephant in the room, right? So if you're in a SaaS provider situation like that, when we say tenant for FusionAuth, there's kind of two different versions of that, right? So every FusionAuth label on the far right that we see here, every instance of that's a containerized version of our FusionAuth instance that has a single tenant on it, correct? It could have multiple, but we'll get to that in a sec.
Yes. So if we're not talking about the FusionAuth tenant inside the application, yes, every one of our customers gets their own. It's not a multi-tenant SaaS solution. It's every one
And
of our
so,
customers gets their own unique set of servers and database.
gotcha. And so if I want to be a customer that's laid out like this is essentially I would call high availability, I would assume, across the 3 different zones. And if I'm in this scenario, those 3 instances should all match up essentially. When you start to get into inside of FusionAuth, the multi-tenancy at that point, can you break down what that relationship is to like the custom domains coming in?
There's actually no relation between the custom domains coming in. You can model it that way if you'd like, but we don't map the incoming domain name to a FusionAuth tenant. But when you start an OAuth flow, you can pass in the application ID, and that is tied to a tenant. So when that authentication flow happens, it can land within a specific tenant inside of the FusionAuth deployment.
Interesting. Okay, that makes more sense to me too. What's the replication across these zones look like? Is that at the database level only, or is there something else more going on?
So with your standard HA production deployment, you're going to get 3 FusionAuth instances that are spread across 3 different availability zones inside of AWS. And we also utilize Amazon's RDS, the relational database service, for the database. Those database instances are also multi-zone, but just 2. So there's always a hot standby that's in another availability zone in case if US East 1A goes down, you're going to have at least 2 FusionAuth instances and your database will be replicated.
That's fantastic. So I'm not a database expert either. Again, if we can talk through this scenario. So typically you want to keep your data as close to your application as possible. How are we achieving that kind of with that scenario you just said?
So,
or is RDS kind of just handling that?
So RDS handles the second hot standby internally. So they pick another availability zone for it to be deployed in. And availability zones within a region are geographically close to each other. So yeah, the location is still sub-millisecond between the different AZs.
Gotcha. Cool. Oh, this was a really fun flow. I'm amazed that we can handle as many. And again, internally, I've just heard, I haven't seen it, but like the amount of customers coming into some of these people that we're working with, our partners and stuff, is just incredible. So it's pretty shocking, pretty amazing that we can still have these instances out there. I'm kind of curious, outside of unlimited domains, you have a lot more work going on, Mark. What's one of the funnest projects outside of unlimited that you've worked on so far?
So this migration to Kubernetes has been really exciting. I have 8 years of Kubernetes experience myself, so I've been operating at scale at prior companies, and we just recently hired another extremely skilled engineer to kind of help this effort out. So I say that's really the most exciting thing that I've been working on since I joined.
That's really cool. And how long, start to finish, do you think this project will be? If you can say, not any hard dates, no guarantees, but like, is this like a 6-month project, a year-long project, a 5-year project? What's this look like?
So I first built out a proof of concept to make sure that we could do what we're trying to do in Kubernetes with all of the security features that we have in place. And that took about 6 weeks. That's POC, right? That's building out the Kubernetes infrastructure, using proper CI/CD pipelines and infrastructure as code, doing it right, but not what I would consider production quality. So that was probably about 6 weeks. The actual production rollout and this renewal of our entire CI/CD pipeline and everything is going to take another, I would say, 8 weeks.
Okay.
We started that just about a month or so ago. So that's why we're thinking before the end of the year, we should have this production ready and integrated with our accounts backend. It won't be customer facing. This will be something that we can turn on for beta customers at first. So all of that will depend on when this goes GA.
Nice. And through that, one of the cool things about FusionAuth that I love is you being in our engineering team. You often are writing our blogs, writing our docs, like it comes full circle, right? So I think you've probably learned a ton of stuff by doing that for FusionAuth that now you can take back. And if another client wants to do this on their own, we can now support them pretty clearly because we're doing it ourselves, kind of dog fooding the situation, if you will, right?
Absolutely. In fact, we just released a new version of our Helm chart, I think just earlier this week. So the Helm chart is one of the ways that you can deploy FusionAuth into a Kubernetes cluster. But taking the changes that we've had to make internally to productionize our Kubernetes FusionAuth deployments, really we took some of those learnings and moved them into our public-facing Helm chart so that the customers can start to see the benefit of the work we're doing right now for FusionAuth Cloud in their own environments.
That's really cool. Hopefully we can get some feedback too, keep improving, all that fun stuff. The nerd in me has to ask, what are you guys using for your infrastructure as code? Terraform? Or, yeah.
Cool. We have a little bit of CloudFormation. Most of it's Terraform. And then we're using EKS for the actual Kubernetes.
Is CloudFormation as slow as it's always been, or have they improved things? I haven't touched it probably in 5 years or so.
It's a personal, yeah, it's kind of slow. I've always preferred Terraform over CloudFormation, but yeah. we have differing opinions inside of the engineering organization around that.
The serverless framework was always a fun. That was my favorite to work with, but Terraform is probably a close second. So, what am I missing, Mark? What happens over in engineering? I mean, you guys are out in Denver for the most part, the majority of you. I'm sitting in Michigan, just kind of making videos and teaching people stuff. What am I missing that we haven't talked about that you'd like to share?
Yeah, most of our engineering team is in Denver. We have one fully remote in another state, but we do get together times a year, get everybody in the same place. We're going to be doing that here pretty soon. I hope for the end of the year.
Nice. I am completely, I should keep showing this. So let me try to find the right link real quick. Okay. All of us are going to be out here at reInvent very soon. That starts on November 27th. So we'll be shipping out a crew to do some booth setups. We are booth number 152. Come chat with us. We'll have engineers, we'll have DevRel, we'll have sales, marketing, you name it. Almost the full crew is going to be there. If they're not having a baby or anything else, then they got to stay behind. So come check that out. We're going to have an awesome party, I think, after party for the rock stars, as we have named it, branded it. So that'll be happening. I've got a really fun video I think is fun that I put together where I clone myself because there's so much work that has to happen at AWS reInvent. So hit up our socials to go check that out. It's just kind of a little promo for heading out to reInvent. And what you'll be seeing out there is I'll be walking around asking authentication questions. So if you don't know how to pronounce the JWT word, that might win you some swag. So come with your auth questions to see me, find me, and we'll be directing you around to win some cool stuff. Mark, it was a pleasure syncing up with you. Unlimited Domains is amazing, and thanks for the hot take on what's coming up in engineering.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm gonna have you on again, so careful.
All right.
Take care. See you, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
When you build an app, writing a login, registration, and user management system seems simple. But pretty soon you're implementing complex standards, like OAuth, OpenID Connect, and SAML. Plus, you'll need to build out additional login features. And don't forget all the acronyms you need to comply with. Secure Auth is not optional, but the time that it takes to build it is. Save time and use FusionAuth. FusionAuth provides authentication, authorization, and user management for any app. It's built for devs to deploy anywhere and integrate with anything in minutes. Seriously, anywhere, anything, and in minutes. FusionAuth installs on any platform, any device, anywhere in the world, including AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and other clouds. And it scales to hundreds of millions of users. To keep user data safe, FusionAuth provides all the controls you need to manage passwords and comply with security requirements and regulations. When users log in with FusionAuth, they'll see your brand, not ours. Theme login pages, style emails, and localized messages to ensure your brand is front and center. And FusionAuth comes with a pre-built management UI to manage and report on users. So stop grinding on Auth and go build something awesome. Get started using FusionAuth for free. Wait, for free? Are we sure that's supposed to be like that?